Common right now to find somebody who has paid maybe $60,000 or $65,000 for a very high-end pickup truck. Well, even the average pickup truck now is going to be crossing over that $50,000 barrier.
Pickup trucks just hit their breaking point, and nobody's ready for the fallout. For years, automakers pushed prices higher, loaded on luxury, and dared buyers to keep up. Now the rebellion is here. Lots are overflowing, and the entire market is unraveling before your eyes. So who saw this collapse coming? What does it mean for the trucks on your street? And why is the crash only getting started? Because by the end of this, you'll realize your next move determines whether you win or get wiped out. The price cliff nobody predicted. Analysts whispered about discounts, but no one dared say the truth aloud. Prices are set to collapse by as much as $25,000, wiping out years of inflated valuations and trapping recent buyers in mountains of debt. The trucks that once symbolized strength and freedom are now symbols of corporate greed and reckless overproduction. For millions of drivers, this is not just about buying a vehicle. It is about financial survival. The seeds of the disaster were planted long before this moment. Automakers, drunk on record profits during the pandemic, pushed prices higher every year. They assumed the market could handle it. They assumed loyalty would outweigh logic. But the numbers told a different story. Average pickup prices soared from $38,000 in 2015 to more than $61,000 today, a leap of nearly 60%. While median household income barely moved, buyers stretched loans to 7 years or longer just to climb into the cab of a truck they could no longer reasonably afford. The system wasn't just strained, it was broken. Now, the cracks are becoming chasms. Summer sales and employee pricing events are not generosity. They are panic. The marketing slogans hide the truth. Tens of thousands of unsold trucks are baking on dealer lots, depreciating every single day. Behind closed doors, manufacturers admit they see what is coming, but on Wall Street calls they still talk about pricing power and premium positioning. For the first time in decades, the story told to investors is completely divorced from the reality on Main Street. Buyers are beginning to sense it, and those who pay attention are realizing they hold more power than ever. And just as consumers begin to see through the facade, the first visible evidence of the collapse is already spreading across America's lots and showrooms. Because when trucks stop moving, the real damage begins, and nowhere is that clearer than in the frozen fields of unsold inventory. The inventory glut. Walk onto certain dealership lots today, and you will feel it instantly. The silence of machines that should have been sold months ago. Rows of gleaming trucks sit unmoved, their chrome mirrors catching the sun, their tires slowly sagging from disuse. Some models have been parked for more than 150 days. That is 5 times longer than the healthy average for the industry. These trucks are not just sitting still. They are bleeding money every single day they remain unsold. Dealerships rarely pay cash for the vehicles filling their lots. They use floor plan financing, essentially borrowing money to hold the inventory until it is sold. In normal times, with strong demand and quick turnover, this system works. But when demand collapses and vehicles linger for months, the carrying costs become catastrophic. At today's rates, a single $50,000 truck costs roughly $28 per day in interest. Multiply that across 300 or 400 unsold trucks, and you have a financial time bomb. Dealers are watching once profitable stores transform into distressed assets before their eyes. The irony is that some dealerships still look successful from a distance. The lots are full, the flags are flying, the banners shout about savings. But insiders know the truth. Each unsold truck is a liability, not an asset. The longer they sit, the more value drains away, not just for the dealer, but for every current owner who sees the resale price of their own vehicle crumble. It is a slow-motion collapse visible from the roadside, a graveyard of shiny metal monuments to an unsustainable business model. And for the buyers who once lined up to pay above sticker price, the atmosphere of stagnation has changed everything. Because when customers finally see through the illusion, they do not just walk away quietly, they revolt. If you're following this collapse, make sure you subscribe right now. From the hidden financing games to the luxury truck implosion, you'll want to know exactly when and where prices are about to break. The consumer revolt. The breaking point wasn't subtle. It was loud, angry, and impossible to ignore. Buyers who once stretched loans to buy their dream trucks are now refusing to step foot inside showrooms. Walk-in traffic has collapsed by more than 1/3, with salespeople describing their lots as ghost towns. Viral videos show angry customers pointing at $65,000 trucks, shouting that they are nothing more than debt traps on wheels. One contractor in Iowa went viral after declaring, "I don't need a spaceship, I need a truck." His frustration was echoed by millions who felt abandoned by the very brands they once tattooed on their arms. Stories of betrayal spread faster than any marketing campaign. A welder in Idaho paid $72,000 for a new Sierra Denali, only to see the same truck listed 2 months later for $58,000 with incentives. "I feel like I got robbed in broad daylight," he said. A young woman in Kansas saved for 3 years to buy her first pickup, proud to finally afford $39,000. Weeks later, the same model appeared for $7,000 less just a few states away. The sense of being cheated was not theoretical. It was deeply personal. That resentment is powerful because it is not just about dollars and cents. It is about trust. For years, manufacturers convinced buyers that ever-rising prices reflected quality, exclusivity, or innovation. But now those promises are unraveling. Customers see through the heated tailgates, the oversized screens, the unnecessary luxury features that add thousands, but solve nothing. They no longer feel pride in the purchase. They feel shame. And that emotional turn is more dangerous than any financial chart, because once customers feel tricked, they do not come back. This is why the revolt matters. It is not a temporary dip in demand. It is a rejection of a business model that turned work trucks into status symbols. And to understand how we got here, we need to look back at the decade-long lie that set the stage for collapse. Peak truck lies. The truth is, this collapse didn't begin in 2025. It began years earlier, when truck makers quietly abandoned their core mission. Pickup trucks were once tools, designed for farmers, contractors, and everyday workers who needed strength, durability, and affordability. But over the last decade, manufacturers shifted their strategy. They discovered that trucks could become luxury items, profit machines, and symbols of status. Slowly, deliberately, they transformed them into rolling mansions, and they priced them accordingly. Between 2015 and today, the average pickup price jumped from $38,000 to more than $61,000. That leap outpaced not only inflation, but also wage growth by a massive margin. While working Americans saw only modest increases in pay, truck prices exploded. Manufacturers filled showrooms with trims costing $80,000, $90,000, even over $100,000, boasting about features that few buyers actually asked for. Trucks once built to haul lumber now came with digital massage seats and panoramic sunroofs. The price tags ballooned, but the value for ordinary workers evaporated. This was not an accident. Internal memos reveal that executives knew buyers were stretching themselves thin. They knew longer loans and higher interest rates were the only way customers could keep up. Yet they pushed forward, quarter after quarter, chasing Wall Street applause while eroding the foundation of their customer base. They built their empire on a bubble, and now that bubble is bursting. The trucks that were supposed to be icons of American strength have become monuments to corporate short-sightedness. And when the collapse hit, it hit the very people who believed in the brand the most. But the story does not end with the past. The consequences of those decisions are colliding with today's reality, and the fallout is spreading fast because what began as hidden greed has now broken into the open market, unleashing forces that no one can contain. EV wrecking ball. It wasn't Tesla that detonated the truck market. It was a company no one expected. Slate, a newcomer, unveiled a bare-bones electric pickup that costs less than $20,000 after incentives. No oversized screens, no leather massage chairs, no chrome for the sake of chrome. Just a simple, practical work truck with a battery where the engine used to be. That single announcement shattered years of carefully cultivated pricing psychology. When a truck like this can exist, buyers suddenly ask, why does a base F-150 cost more than twice as much? The truth is brutal for traditional automakers. They spent the past 5 years positioning electric pickups as luxury flagships, $80,000 toys for early adopters with disposable income. Ford's Lightning, General Motors' Silverado EV, even Tesla's long-delayed Cybertruck, all were pitched as the future, but with price tags higher than most Americans' annual income. Slate rewrote the rules overnight. It proved that trucks can be affordable again. It proved that the inflated prices were never necessary. And worst of all, for the big names, buyers noticed. Dealers are already reporting customers invoking Slate as a bargaining chip. They don't necessarily want the newcomer's truck yet, but its very existence exposes the industry's margins as fiction. It is the emperor with no clothes moment. Every dollar over 20,000 feels like gouging. That shift in perception is irreversible. Once the veil is lifted, you cannot put it back. And just as EVs destroyed pricing illusions, another shockwave hit, one born not in design studios but in Washington and Ottawa. Tariff chaos. The pickup market thrives on predictability. But tariffs turned it into a madhouse. When new trade policies slapped fees on vehicles assembled outside U.S. borders, the result was chaos. Identical trucks suddenly carried wildly different price tags depending on where they rolled off the line. A Ford F-150 built in Michigan sold for $48,000, while its Mexican twin stickered for $56,000. Buyers could not believe their eyes. The same truck, the same trim, the same features, thousands of dollars apart because of a factory's postal code. That madness shattered what little trust remained in manufacturer pricing. Social media exploded with screenshots, spreadsheets, and VIN decoder tutorials. Ordinary buyers became amateur detectives, cross-referencing factory codes to track which plants produced which models. Facebook groups organized lists of good VINs and bad VINs, sharing discounts like contraband. Transparency, once unthinkable in truck sales, was now unavoidable. Buyers no longer needed to take a dealer's word. They could check a VIN against an online chart and know instantly whether they were being overcharged. The effect was devastating. Every attempt to maintain pricing discipline collapsed under the weight of this grassroots information war. Tariffs were supposed to protect American manufacturing. Instead, they exposed just how arbitrary and fragile the entire pricing structure was. For automakers, it was an unforced error. For consumers, it was proof that the sticker price is little more than a corporate bluff. And in the middle of that chaos, catastrophe is playing out in its most lucrative corner, the luxury tier. Luxury truck implosion! For more than a decade, the luxury pickup was Detroit's golden goose. Denali's, Platinums, Tungstens, trucks priced like sports cars, often cresting $100,000, while delivering profit margins of 30% or more. They were marketed as rolling status symbols, trucks for people who wanted to show off as much as they wanted to haul. But by mid-2025, the bubble burst. Six-figure trucks are now sitting unsold for more than 180 days, even as dealers slash prices by tens of thousands. The prestige has evaporated. Owners who thought they were buying investments are discovering brutal losses. A Ram Tungsten that sold for $92,000 new is wholesaling for $78,000 after only a few months of use. That $14,000 depreciation hit in less than a year is worse than many luxury sedans. Lease penetration rates, once above 40% for premium trims, have dropped below 30%. The wealthy buyers that propped up this market are no longer playing along. They see trucks that were sold as exclusive being fire sold with massive incentives. Exclusivity means nothing when every neighbor can suddenly afford the same trim at a discount. This collapse strikes at the heart of the automaker's financial model. Luxury trucks were not just profitable, they subsidized everything else, from small cars to electric development. As their margins vanish, the entire house of cards begins to wobble. And if the top end of the market can crumble so quickly, the rest of the truck segment doesn't stand a chance. Because what falls next is not just prestige or pricing, it's the very foundation of jobs, factories, and communities built on trucks. Communities in crisis. The collapse of truck sales doesn't just hurt dealerships and manufacturers. It guts entire communities. Every full-size truck plant employs thousands directly, but each of those jobs supports more than 7 additional positions in the surrounding economy. That multiplier effect means a single layoff notice ripples into restaurants, parts suppliers, advertising firms, construction contractors, even the local high school football team that depended on dealer sponsorships. What looks like a market correction on Wall Street feels like an earthquake in places like Fort Wayne, Flint, and Arlington. Already, cracks are spreading. General Motors cut a second shift in Michigan. Temporary contracts in Indiana were canceled without warning. In Texas, overtime evaporated almost overnight. Workers who had counted on steady paychecks suddenly face uncertainty, and their towns face shrinking tax bases. Empty storefronts appear near plants. Family-owned suppliers close their doors. The collapse of a truck order book becomes the collapse of a local economy. And the psychological blow is even worse. For decades, truck production was treated as untouchable, the last redoubt of American manufacturing. Now, even that fortress is crumbling. This isn't just about jobs disappearing. It's about identity. Communities built around trucks believed they were building something permanent. Watching assembly lines fall silent feels like watching their own story erased. While workers and towns reel from the fallout, another set of players sees opportunity in the wreckage. Wall Street pounces. Where Main Street sees collapse, Wall Street sees bargains. Private equity firms, hedge funds, and mega dealer groups are circling distressed dealerships like vultures. The logic is simple. Buy low, consolidate, and strip costs until only the biggest survive. Already, mid-sized dealer groups are being swallowed whole, their local brands replaced by faceless conglomerates. The game is not selling trucks. The game is controlling real estate, financing streams, and service operations. For investors, the current crisis is perfect timing. Trucks once provided reliable cash flow, but now the valuations of dealerships are collapsing. Floor plan debt, empty showrooms, and evaporating margins make family-owned stores desperate to sell. Wall Street scoops them up for pennies on the dollar. Then comes the consolidation. Cut staff, streamline marketing, push digital retail. What was once a community dealership becomes an outpost of a national chain. Efficiency replaces personality. Automakers quietly encourage this trend. Working with a handful of giant groups is easier than managing thousands of independent stores, but the cost is cultural. Local businesses vanish, and consumers face fewer options. The dealership experience becomes standardized, automated, and soulless. For investors, it is profit. For communities, it is another hollowing out. As financiers reshape the industry, politicians face a backlash of their own making. Political backfire. The political class sold tariffs as protection. They promised jobs, stronger factories, and secure supply chains. What they delivered was chaos. Identical trucks carried different prices depending on assembly, undermining trust in both automakers and government. Consumers felt cheated. Workers felt betrayed. And now, the politicians who championed these policies are feeling the heat. In Michigan, town hall meetings turned into shouting matches. Voters demanded to know why plants were slowing down, while sticker prices skyrocketed. In Texas, laid-off workers confronted representatives who once stood on factory floors, promising prosperity. Instead of celebrating new jobs, governors now scramble to explain temporary layoffs and reduced shifts. Tariffs that were meant to protect are now seen as accelerants of collapse. By the summer of 2025, lawmakers across party lines faced an uncomfortable truth. Their policies had backfired. The fallout is already bleeding into the election cycle. Candidates who once campaigned on truck jobs are suddenly silent. Consumer anger at paying $60,000 for trucks that now sell for far less is spilling into political discourse. Voters remember who cheered the tariffs, and they will not forget at the ballot box. But beyond the political theater lies another storm, one that affects every current truck owner in America. The used truck shockwave. If you think the collapse stops at dealerships, think again. The used truck market is imploding even faster. Owners who paid $70,000 or more for new pickups just a year ago now find their vehicles worth $20,000 less, almost overnight. Negative equity, the nightmare where you owe more than your truck is worth, is spreading like wildfire. Families who stretched finances to buy a shiny new pickup are trapped, unable to trade in, refinance, or sell without taking crushing losses. Used lots tell the story in brutal detail. Rows of nearly new trucks line auction blocks, selling for far below original sticker prices. Dealers who once profited from used inventory now watch margins vanish as supply overwhelms demand. For consumers, it feels like betrayal. For banks, it feels like risk. Loan portfolios filled with overvalued trucks are suddenly toxic, forcing lenders to tighten credit or raise rates. That only makes it harder for new buyers to step in, deepening the spiral. The shockwave is personal. Jason in Idaho, who bought a Sierra Denali for $72,000, saw it listed for $58,000 just 2 months later. Multiply that story by hundreds of thousands, and you see the scale. The collapse is not abstract anymore. It is sitting in driveways, parked outside homes, depreciating faster than families can pay down loans. If the used market is unraveling this quickly, the final act of this collapse will shake the entire auto industry to its foundations. Consumers take control. For the first time in decades, truck buyers have the upper hand. It is not the dealership dictating terms anymore. It is the customer. Online communities track discounts across state lines in real time. Viral spreadsheets circulate with VIN codes, factory origins, and hidden incentives. A buyer in Kansas can now know exactly what a buyer in Florida paid and demand the same deal. What was once private dealer knowledge has become public property. Transparency has destroyed the information gap that allowed salespeople to play games. Consumers are learning to weaponize this moment. Families hold off purchases, waiting for bigger discounts. Contractors band together in Facebook groups to bulk negotiate with dealers. Reddit threads dissect sales contracts line by line, exposing hidden tricks in financing. Each act of collective intelligence shifts power away from corporations and toward the people who actually buy the trucks. The very tactics dealers once used Confusion, mystery, and scarcity are being turned against them, and that shift is permanent. Even if prices stabilize, buyers have tasted control, and they will not give it back. The old showroom dance of haggling and secrecy is dead. In its place is a cold, data-driven reality, where customers know the margins before they step onto the lot. While consumers are seizing control, the corporations themselves are preparing for a different kind of war, one fought not in showrooms, but in boardrooms. Automakers at war with themselves. The collapse has not only pitted manufacturers against consumers, it has turned them against each other. The truck market that once subsidized the entire American auto industry is now cannibalizing itself. Ford slashes prices, forcing General Motors to counter. Ram offers massive trade-in bonuses, which Toyota cannot match. What looks like competition is actually a slow-motion suicide pact, erasing billions in profits quarter after quarter. The irony is brutal. For years, automakers depended on truck margins to cover losses in sedans, small cars, and early electric vehicle programs. Now, the goose that laid the golden egg is bleeding out, and each company is desperate to keep its share. Executives who once boasted of pricing power now scramble to explain collapsing revenue to investors. Every press release talks about temporary softness, but the numbers reveal something permanent. The profit structure is gone. Inside boardrooms, panic has taken hold. Retooling schedules are quietly accelerated. Entire model lines are being reconsidered. Plans that were supposed to roll out over the next decade are being rushed into the market by 2026. The automakers are not just fighting each other, they are fighting time. And while boardrooms burn, Wall Street investors are preparing for their own reckoning as the collapse infects balance sheets worldwide. Wall Street shaken. Investors who once treated trucks as a guaranteed profit engine are now waking up to a nightmare. Ford and General Motors shares have already fallen by double digits since inventory concerns went public. Analysts who once praised pricing discipline are now forced to admit that discipline was a mirage. Truck profits are not just shrinking, they are evaporating, taking entire corporate strategies down with them. Hedge funds that bet on stable margins are scrambling to unwind positions. Banks that financed dealership floor plans are writing down losses. Bond markets, once comfortable lending to automakers on the strength of truck sales, are demanding higher yields. The financial fallout is global. Pension funds, mutual funds, and retirement accounts tied to auto stocks are suddenly at risk, meaning the pain spreads far beyond dealerships and into the portfolios of everyday Americans. And yet, Wall Street is not just a victim, it is a predator too. Distressed assets are being snapped up. Consolidation is accelerating. Private equity firms hunt not just for dealerships, but also for suppliers, logistics companies, and service networks. To them, the collapse is not a tragedy, it is an opportunity. But as they strip and rebuild the industry, the volatility threatens to spread across the entire financial system. And in the end, it all comes back to the buyers, because the collapse is not just about money. It is about power shifting in ways that will never be reversed. The end of the old order. What we are witnessing is bigger than a price correction. It is the death of a century-old system. The franchise dealership model, the sacred cow of American automotive retail, is collapsing under the weight of transparency and consumer revolt. Automakers are rethinking whether they need middlemen at all. Direct-to-consumer sales, subscription models, and stripped-down work trucks are no longer experiments. They are inevitabilities. For decades, trucks were sold on scarcity, mystique, and loyalty. That mythology is gone. Buyers now see through the smoke, and they want tools, not toys. They want fairness, not fantasy. The collapse of bloated six-figure luxury trims and the rise of cheaper, stripped-down models is more than a pricing shift. It is a cultural reset. The American truck is being pulled back to its roots, and the companies that fail to adapt will be erased. The real story is not just trucks sitting on lots. It is power moving away from corporations and toward consumers. It is the unraveling of corporate lies that treated work vehicles like status symbols. It is the rebalancing of an economy that pushed prices 60% higher in a decade while wages barely moved. The collapse is not just financial. It is political, cultural, and generational. And once this old order falls, it will never rise again. The only question left is simple. Will you wait or will you get played? So, are pickup trucks finally returning to their roots? Or is this just the beginning of a bigger collapse? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. And if you found this breakdown valuable, hit like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next big shift in the auto industry. Trust me, the story's only getting started.